At 29 years old, I lost everything. I lost my house, my self-respect. I had left a job and a career path that was set to take a risk, and I lost big on that risk. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Nick. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here today. First, again, another round of applause for the entire Kiln team. They're fantastic. This is a wonderful space, and I'm grateful that they provide opportunities like this. Can everyone hear me okay, by the way? Everyone in the back, all good? Okay, perfect. All right. I left this up there at the beginning. I'm not actually going to talk about my company today. If you want to learn more, you can download our app, or you can follow us on Instagram or email me. Love to chat anytime. But I wanted to give a different message today. I thought a lot about this. When they asked me to give this presentation, it was quite a few months ago, wasn't it? Like 4 months ago, Nick? Something like that. This was the topic that immediately came to my mind. It's one of those semi-taboo topics that we don't talk about a lot in business. And so I feel it's an important one to have a conversation on. So over the next half an hour or 45 minutes, I'm going to share some stories with you about me and my experiences, and then maybe at the end we can have a little bit of a dialogue on it. Okay, so if you remember the movie Apollo 13, there's the scene when they find when they learn there's a problem, and the ground control individual has the statement that failure is not an option, and he walks off and they figure it out and they bring the astronauts home. Here's the thing about business. Failure is an option. The reality is many, many people fail at business. Sometimes it's total failure, sometimes it's a partial failure, but failures happen, and they happen every single day. And if you're trying to pursue or make entrepreneurial pursuits, you need to realize that failure is a reality that can occur. And so I want to talk a little bit about that today. But something that was really important to me to lead out with, I am immensely blessed. I don't in any way want to stand up here and hold up my experiences or my stories as though I'm the pinnacle of failure, but that my life has been more of a struggle than others. I think Rex was telling me there's a presentation with someone who was in a camp with Al-Qaeda for like six years. Is that right, on Monday? Clearly, I have never spent time in an Al-Qaeda camp. I've never had some of these struggles that people across the world have. I'm immensely, immensely blessed, and I'm really grateful for the experiences that I've had. So I will start with my family. I have an incredible family who I love dearly. They are the most important thing to me in my life. I have a wife who I absolutely love. For those of you who are not married and you are an entrepreneur, it is important that you find a partner that understands what life is like being married to an entrepreneur, because it is a difficult life. We work long hours, we take risks constantly. Even when we find success, we're still not satisfied and take further risks. That is the life of being an entrepreneur, and my wife is incredibly supportive and loving, as are my children. One of them's here today. Jonas, raise your hand. I'm going to awkwardly embarrass you. Jonas is my 18-year-old son. I'm super proud of him, and I'm really grateful for him and the man he's become. I have a dog. Her name's Penny. She's neurotic and has all kinds of emotional issues. She's scared of pretty much everything. Pool noodles, basketballs, balloons she's terrified of. But we love her, and she's an important part of our family. I get to live somewhere incredible. All of you who are here undoubtedly live here as well and realize how beautiful it is to live here in St. George. I absolutely love living here, and I love the outdoors. I have friends. Many of you who follow our Instagram channel know I have a good friend, Corbin Allred, who does absolutely ridiculous things with me, and it's so much fun. And I'm grateful for him and for all the good friends that I have in my life. I get to go out and explore the outdoors with my kids. I get to explore the outdoors by myself. I get to go hiking and canyoneering and climbing and explore. Now, this last slide I'm going to show you, I was trying to find one on health, and I was going through my photos, and I couldn't find a good one that signified health, and so this was my placeholder that, as of this morning, became my permanent slide. So this is a picture of my scalp. I had a bump on my scalp, and I was like, what is this? And it turned out to be nothing, so that's representative of nothing's wrong. I'm okay. I have in my phone numbers for mayors and congressmen and senators, presidential candidates, media personalities. I've had an incredible life being surrounded by amazing people, and I've had incredible experiences with those people and learned a ton from them. And this next slide I'm about to show you, this is a real event that happened, but after watching Ryan Kohler's presentation, I've been trying to take greater stabs at AI. And so I inserted 3 images into ChatGPT in the hopes that it would spit me out the image that I wanted. This is what it gave me. That is me, according to AI, from a picture. I don't know what Horthface is, but it's apparently a brand in the ChatGPT world. That is Tom Cruise. I did actually ride the Matterhorn at Disneyland with Tom Cruise. Super cool story, has nothing to do with today, but I've had experiences like that in my life that are incredible, that I'm grateful for, that have built the individual that I am. You get the point. I'm immensely blessed. But I've also experienced failure. Walt Disney, who is one of my absolute heroes, his story has been told in many documentaries and movies, and he's an incredible inspiration. He said this when he was younger. After a failure where he had lost everything, before Disney became a household name, before Mickey Mouse, before any of that, he said the following: "It's good to have a failure while you're young because it teaches you so much. For one thing, it makes you aware that such a thing can happen to anybody. And once you've lived through the worst, you're never quite as vulnerable afterwards." That is so true. And so today, as I talk about and share some very personal experiences with you, keep this in mind. Keep in mind what you learn from failure, because that's the entire point of this presentation today. Because here's the hard truth. No one escapes failure. Not me, not you, not the giants of industry. You could go through individual after individual, tech giant after tech giant. They all had failure. Some of them really, really glorious and large failures. It's not a question of if, but when and how. This is the only graph, I promise. I'm not much of a business presentation guy, but I wanted to illustrate something that I think you have all heard of generally. So I want to do something if we can. This will be semi-interactive. If everyone can just raise their hand for me. Just raise it up high because it's important. And if we can get about right here, this row over, just drop your hands. Okay. In the first year of business, 20% of businesses fail. Okay? Let's continue over to the middle here, and everyone on this side of the room, drop your hand. The first 5 years of business, 50% of all businesses fail. Right about here, all the way back to Paige, why don't you drop your hands? The first 10, 65%. And then, I know these numbers aren't quite right, maybe the first 2 here, drop your hands. 75% of businesses fail in the first 15 years. Look around the room. In reality, these are people. They have mortgages, they have car payments, they have kids, they have dreams, they probably even had a really good idea, but nevertheless, they failed for whatever reason. Maybe they made poor marketing decisions, maybe they overextended themselves, maybe the idea wasn't that great, maybe there wasn't market adoption, maybe they were too early. We think about some of these companies like Airbnb or Uber and others, Facebook. These weren't the first iterations of these companies in many cases. MySpace existed before Facebook, and yet Facebook is the one that we all know of now. So failure can and does happen. There are 2 types of failures that I'm going to talk about with 2 stories today. The first, sometimes it's permanent. So in 2007, I owned a company in Las Vegas. I had left working for the federal court. I went to law school at UNLV, And following law school, I clerked for the federal district court in Las Vegas. It was an amazingly prestigious job. It was the kind of job that post-law school, it sets you up to be able to go be very involved and do very well in the legal profession. I made the decision to leave that job and to start an import company with a friend of mine that we went to law school with. Well, in 2007, we were involved in lots of casino projects. This picture is of Fontainebleau on the Strip. I can't remember how many years it took to complete this, but it was a lot. And this was kind of the view of the Strip in Las Vegas in 2007 and 2008. Every major casino company had a project like this that was vertical. The company that I owned, we imported doors and trim from China and India for major construction projects. After the first year in 2006 of having some pretty decent success after leaving the federal court, 2007 came around and we had what looked like to be an amazing year. We had lined up many tens of millions of dollars in contracts with these casinos, and it looked like it was going to be life-changing. Sometime around mid-2007, some of these casinos started to express some concerns as to their projects, and some of these contracts got put on hold. Contracts being put on hold went to contracts being canceled. And some contracts being canceled went to every single outstanding contract we had with every one of the major casinos and hotel properties on the Strip and outside of Nevada was canceled. And we were left facing, what are we going to do? I knew from my legal experience, at least, the limited that I had, that taking legal action against companies like MGM was probably ill-advised. I didn't see a lot of possibility for success. And so I decided at that time that I was going to turn over my interest in the company to my business partner who wanted to continue to pursue that. So at 29 years old, by the way, who's 29 or younger in here? Raise your hand. So I want this to internalize a little bit for you. By the way, Reagan made a bet with me. She said, if you can make somebody cry, I'll give you $50. The odds are I'm the one that's going to cry today as I talk about some of these raw things. So I think I'm going to win that bet. At 29 years old, by the way, that's Jonas right there laying on me. That's my now 18-year-old son in that picture. At 29 years old, I lost everything. I lost my house, my self-respect. I had left a job and a career path that was set to take a risk, and I lost big on that risk. I didn't know where to turn. My wife worked nights at a clothing store. I was substitute teaching during the day to make ends meet. To make it clear, the legal market was very, very tough at the end of 2007 and 2008 in Las Vegas. People just weren't hiring because of, 2008, we know that now, of what had occurred in 2008. It happened a little earlier in 2007. In the construction world, things really started to unravel. So going back into a legal career didn't seem like the best option. There weren't a lot of opportunities for me to go that way, even despite what I had already experienced. And so I was substitute teaching some days. I will never forget, my wife, who also nannied during the day just to make ends meet, the individual she nannied for owned a business that helped with conventions. I would have individuals hold up signs. And so during the day, some days when there was a convention, I would go down to the Mandalay Bay or to some of these other convention centers and hold a sign to point people which way to go. At 29, having a doctorate, feeling I had made all the right moves in my life, there I was in the lobby of a convention center holding a sign. And I will never forget one day in the Mandalay Bay, I was sitting there holding this sign, dressed kind of like I was dressed right there, semi-professional, and this group of drunk guys came up. And I could hear them talking to each other, saying, "Look at that loser right there. Gosh, she needs to go get a job." To make it worse, I had friends and even some family who didn't fully understand the situation who expressed those things to my face. Now, I'd like to say that there's a magical happy ending, but there's not. That was it. So we left Las Vegas, moved in with my parents, again at 29 with a kid, moved with my parents in their basement and tried to rebuild our life. There's no silver lining. There's stories, there's lessons, and we'll talk about those in a little bit, but it was the end. It ended. Now, sometimes failure isn't as permanent as that. It happens. It may happen to some of you in this room, but it's not always that permanent. Sometimes failure is temporary. When we moved to Arizona, after I kind of dust myself off after a few months, and I really got tired of living in my parents' basement, maybe my wife was a little more tired of it than me, but both of us were equally tired. I went to lunch with a friend that I went to law school, or a friend that I went to high school with. And that friend owned a construction company installing these things called shade cells. I had never heard of it. I didn't have any idea what they were. But we went to lunch and he was talking to me about it. And he said, listen, I think if you can figure out a way to manufacture these things, I think there's a business for this. And I said, okay. So I went and bought a sewing machine on Craigslist, this sewing machine. It's an industrial machine. And we bought some fabric. Now, to put in perspective, I think in Scouts with the needle and thread, I had sewed a button on once. I had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't going to keep living in my parents' basement. And so I thought, all right, well, let's figure this out. So I bought this sewing machine, bought some cloth, built a website, and just started marketing. Got a little job, little jobs turned into little bigger jobs. And over time, from 2008 to the story I'll lead up to here in 2007, we started to get more and more clients, got an office, hired employees, got more sewing machines, and started to become fairly proficient and well-known in the industry. And in 2011, the opportunity of opportunities happened. Caterpillar reached out to us, and they were doing a show at Connex in Las Vegas. I should have took the Omen. In Las Vegas for us to do some product for them. They wanted to do all these shading structures for their exhibit. By the way, just as an aside, it's amazing when companies have that much money to do temporary structures in a parking lot. Literally everything we built, they just ended up scrapping afterwards. Crazy. But we took this job, we bid it, and we won. We were shocked. We won a project with Caterpillar. Well, come to find out, the reason we won is because we were about 50% the cost of everybody else. That should have been red flag number one. But as we started to bid out this project, one of the things that we had as part of this was steel production. Now, to date in my company, all we had done was fabric manufacturing. We had always outsourced all of the steel production to be done. And as we started to get these steel quotes back, we realized real quickly the problem. The steel quotes were, in some cases, 10 to 15% more than the entire contract of what we had bid. So we knew there was no way we were going to get somebody to build this structure for us. So my business partner and I took 2 weeks, went on YouTube, and learned everything we could learn about welding. And after about 2 weeks, we were just confident enough to go into a welding supply shop to buy a welder and some materials and some gas, and we practiced on some scrap steel for another 2 weeks. And then after a month, we called a welding certification company and said, yeah, sure, let's give this a go. And had the welding certifier come and certify us off on a couple procedures and processes that were going to be used for this. And we fabricated all of the steel ourselves. That took a few months or so, and then by the time it was all powder coated and loaded, we ended up going and borrowing a 40-foot flatbed trailer from a landscape company nearby that we had become friends with, and went and rented an F-350 truck to tow that trailer, to tow the goods to Las Vegas where they were having the show. Now, I was the designated driver, and had never driven a trailer, let alone a 40-foot flatbed gooseneck trailer. And I had never driven a diesel truck before, so this was all new. So we had this mapped out to where we were going to take all the side roads, all of the small streets where there wasn't going to be anybody on. We went all the way to Needles. We drove up along the Colorado River. The whole drive took like 9 or 10 hours. Little did we realize that by doing that, it was going to put us in Las Vegas right during rush hour traffic. So we pulled onto the 15 to a dead stop and to 1 million people. So we get to our exit at Sahara, and we turn right. And if any of you have been to Las Vegas, you know this intersection right by the convention center. And then we're going to turn right again onto Eastern. And right as I was about to turn right onto Eastern, a little sports car cut me off and pulled right in front of me and got me a little bit kind of out of sorts. I could see the destination. We were a quarter mile away from where we were going to drop the steel off. A little more detail about the contract. It was a 50-50. The first 50% we were going to receive was when we delivered that steel. The second was when we completed the project. We were month to month, paycheck to paycheck at this point. If I didn't get that check that I was there to deliver steel for, I was finished. That was the end. And in my mind, in 3 short years, I will have failed twice. So I'm a little freaked out right at the moment. So I'm turning right. You can envision this. And this car cuts me off. I kind of slam on my brakes and I kind of get angry for a second. And then I complete the turn. What I have here next, I don't have actual CCTV footage of this, but this next reenactment is effectively what happened. The 2 first individuals that you're going to see in the car are the people closest to the incident, and the next 2 are myself and my business partner. So I'm going to go ahead and play this.
Where does he think he's going?
I have no idea.
You gotta go, you gotta go.
That's the sound of the cables on the trailer. You see, I struck the side of a light pole and cut it in half with my trailer and dumped 20,000 pounds of steel into the middle of an intersection in Las Vegas during rush hour traffic. And it felt a little bit like that. My hair wasn't quite that blonde, but that look, I am pretty sure was the look on my face. And I think my business partner was saying some words that aren't appropriate for right now. I sat there in this rented truck in a borrowed trailer during rush hour traffic as police car after police car shows up, as there's a traffic copter and then 2 and then 3 overhead. And I'm just gripping the steering wheel with this look on my face of, what the crap just happened? I hadn't even gotten out of the car by the time the police officer came up to the window, had me roll it down and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I'm fine." And he says, You're being awful calm." And I said, "Yeah, I'm a little past feeling at this point." If you could think of feeling as a circle, and you've got, calm, fine, normal, and then stressed out, and then frustrated, and then get angry, and then scared. If you go all the way to the end of that circle before you get back to calm, you have numb. That's kind of how I felt. I thought, I'm done. Like, holy crap. And this isn't like little pieces of rebar. This is 20,000 pounds of steel dumped in the middle of an intersection. I have just cut a light pole in half. The trailer is up on the sidewalk. Steel is strewn about the street. People are yelling at me, and I'm just glassy-eyed, wanting to crawl into a hole. So my business partner, after a few minutes, gained some composure. He starts calling rental companies for forklifts. Well, it was 5:30 on a Friday in Las Vegas. There was no rental companies open. Nobody was available. So after about 20 minutes of trying to do that, we had to call our client, Caterpillar, and say, "Hey, so you know that steel we were supposed to be dropping off about a half an hour ago? Yeah, it's laid in the middle of the street. I'm not sure what you want us to do." And they said, "Oh, well, we got some forklifts on site, so we'll send them." So this, I wish I did have this footage because it was hilarious if it wasn't so awful. Eastern is shut down. I think Eastern is 4 or 5 lanes right here. Coming northbound the wrong way are 3 little forklifts like clown cars, kind of doing this down the road. And they looked like clown cars. And they show up and they pick up the steel and they push it on the trailer. And we get to our destination. I'm still numb. I still look like this. But the super on site kind of smiles and hands me a check. And I said, "What's this for?" I said, "We just dumped all your product in the street. It's damaged." And he's like, He said, honestly, we're in the heavy machinery business. He said, last week, we had a large excavator on the top story of a 4-story garage that we dumped off the 4-story garage that fell away to the ground. He's like, this is nothing. And so I'm standing with this check, and I'm going, are you sure? And he said, oh yeah, you're fine. He's like, just, it's just a convention. So I take it and I put, and I'm still like this, right? I'm still like, okay. So I put it in my pocket. We get in the car quickly and drive off. I still have a ticket though, and it was a ticket for a violation and a fix-it ticket. I cut a street light in half, and I drug steel across an entire intersection. $20,000 is not even going to cover the labor on that repair. So I'm still finished in my mind, still totally finished. Well, I get back to the office. After a couple days of emotional recovery and depositing the check, I call Las Vegas Metro because I pulled the check out, or I pulled the ticket out, and I realized they had written it to my business partner. Well, I didn't feel right about that, so I called them up and I said, hey, can I talk to the officer that gave this ticket? So they put him on the phone. I said, you wrote this ticket to my business partner. I was the one driving. He shouldn't have to bear the brunt of this. We got to figure this out. And the officer got quiet. Then he said, you know what? Hold on a second. And he went away for like 5 minutes. And then he came back and he said, hey, don't worry about it. I said, I cut a streetlight pole in half. He said, I know. Don't worry about it. He said the next week, or he said a day or two after you, someone else hit it and cut it completely down to the ground, so they're on the hook for it, so you're good. I said, and this is the lawyer in me, right? I'm like, okay, be very specific. What do you mean don't worry about it? Like tear it up, it never happened? He said, yeah. So we're good. Yep, we're good. Okay, bye. And I hang up. And I was good. We went on in that company to do really great things. When I sold it in 2003, we were doing work all over the world. My clients were companies like Apple, Google, SC Johnson Wax, Eli Lilly, Texas Instruments, Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. We had amazing clients and amazing customers and an incredible team. Sometimes failure is temporary. So when you experience failure, I think it's important for you to realize that you are not alone. Every entrepreneur has a failure story. You're not the only one that has stared at the wreckage and wondering, what now? I want to take 10 seconds, and I want each of you to think about a time that you have failed in business, in relationships, in life. And think about, just really try to internalize how that made you feel. Because the rest of this talk, I want to talk about what we learn from failure. So take 10 seconds and just think on that. Okay. What does failure teach? There's 4 things I'm going to talk about here in the rest of my time. Failure teaches resilience. Henry Ford said, the only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing. Failure doesn't break you, it builds you. Resilience isn't born in success, it's forged in the fire of setbacks. With my first company, that had no real positive outcome for me from a business standpoint. In fact, it had years and years of negative impact for me in a business standpoint. I learned that failure is okay. It happens. 2008 happened. You probably all know someone in 2008 who lost their house, lost a job, lost everything. If you're too young to have lived through it from a business standpoint, you probably have parents or aunts or uncles or relatives. Turns out a lot of people lost a lot in 2008. They had failure. In the next example, my business partner, a couple days after we got home and after he felt like it was safe to talk to me, He brought me this. This is a piece of paint from the light pole that I cut in half. It's actually one of my most cherished possessions, to be honest. I have this hanging in my home office, and every time I have a hard day, or I think that the specter of failure is looming right around the corner, I look at that picture or that piece of paint, and I remember it wasn't that day. That day sucked. That was a tough day. I thought I was finished that day. And it all worked out okay. It turned out to be kind of a cool story, too. Failure teaches that work is a privilege. No work is beneath you. I think a lot about that time for those few months when we were transitioning from Las Vegas to Arizona, doing just whatever work I could do. Holding up a sign at a casino to point people where to go. I am not a fan of people saying something is beneath them. As entrepreneurs, as business owners, we are about exploring. We are about creating. Creating comes with hardship. Creating comes with struggle. Creating comes with failure. But nothing should be beneath any of us. We should be willing to get our hands dirty. We should be willing to learn. We should be doing the work of the least of our team member as well as the most. Failure humbles you. Suddenly, no job is too small when you're clawing your way back. How true that is. But, a warning, hold on to your humility, or you may be destined to relive in your hubris. I have seen time and time again colleagues that I've met and gotten to know in different businesses who reach a level of success and think that means that they're now the god of that thing. They have forgotten their own failures, their own struggles, their own difficulties. Stay humble. Third, failure teaches to struggle is an honor. Struggle isn't shameful, it's noble. It's the mark of someone who dared to try. I've said it a few times to individuals here at Kiln, but one of the things I love about what Kiln provides and what this office concept provides is the ability for you to go and talk to other business owners, to very easily go to a door, to knock on glass, to have a conversation when you are struggling, when you have a question, when you've reached some impasse that you can't figure out how to get past. Be honest in your struggles. Communicate with people. Don't be prideful about the fact that you don't know something or you don't understand. Struggle is an honor to go through. The definition of entrepreneurship, I've never really loved, but it most literally is a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses taking on greater than normal financial risk in order to do so. That is definitely a true statement. I prefer this, which is kind of my own personal definition of entrepreneurship, which is to enter without knowing, to step into the darkness without a light, to struggle and succeed. Entrepreneurship is a struggle. Failure is a part of that. It is going to happen to you. Finally, failure teaches compassion. Failure softens you. Clearly, as I get emotional up here talking about business failure, it shouldn't be an emotional topic, right? Failure softens you. You see others struggling and you think, I have been there. It's a bond we share. I want to share a very, very personal story here. I debated whether to share this. I feel it illustrates some important things that I have learned, but I decided ultimately that I will share it. I've never shared the story publicly. I've only shared it with a couple of individuals privately in my entire life, but I feel it's instructive. An important caveat to this, the story is about me. It's something that I did, and I don't share it to boast in myself. I share it to illustrate lessons that I have learned. James came to work for me in my last company straight out of prison. He was a felon who had done some not great things. And he came into an interview. We were looking for someone to work in the manufacturing floor to help with manufacturing and packaging, so different things that we had. And so it wasn't a high-skill job. He came into this interview with a shirt that looked like it was covered in cigarette burn holes. He just had holes and ratted shirt. His jeans were all torn up. He had a very, very scraggly beard. And he had a lot of questionable, I know tattoos aren't necessarily questionable anymore, but questionable gang tattoos, let's just say, that he had that were very visible in prominent places. He was not a terribly hireable individual. But he interviewed really well. He was kind, he was nice, he answered the questions, and it wasn't a high-skilled job. And so I figured, okay, we'll take a chance on this guy. After a year or so, he proved to be a good employee. He worked hard, he showed up on time, he did what he was asked to do. After a particularly good year with the company, my wife and I had decided that we were going to take the entire company to Disneyland. We were honored to be able to do so. And part of that was to take all of the employees, all of their kids, everyone, put them up in the Grand California Hotel, which was awesome, and pay for a few days at Disneyland, and then all of the general expenses that they had there. Gave each of the kids a little bit of money. A few days after we had made this announcement, the management team had gotten wind from some of the employees, and then they came to me to address that, James was concerned about actually being able to get there. He had one car, which was a minivan that didn't operate very well at all. He didn't think it was going to make it to California. And if he even did get to California, he was planning on bringing a Coleman cooler just full of frozen foods to eat, and that all of his family was going to go back to the hotel and eat in the hotel. I was not okay with that. I wanted him to have a good experience. I didn't want him to be scrimping. I wanted him to be spending time with his kids. He had 4 little girls and a wife that loved him. He had never, ever, nor had his kids, been on a trip like this or with their dad. So I again went to my wife, my loving wife, and I said, hey, I want to pull a bunch of cash out and give it to James. I explained the situation, and she said, yeah, that's great, let's do it. So I put a bunch of cash in an envelope. The next day I went back to the office, went to the warehouse, said, James, hey, come here, let's go talk. I don't know if he thought he was getting fired or what, but we went behind the warehouse. He seemed a little concerned. So we went in the back, and I just said, hey, I understand that you're a little concerned about this trip and what it's going to cost your family. I said, I don't want you to have that struggle. And I handed him this envelope that he could clearly tell, I don't know if it's from a former life or what, but it was a stack of cash inside an envelope. And he looks at me and he's like, no, Matthew, I can't take this. And he hands it back. And I said, no, you can take this. I need you to take this. I said, I want you to enjoy this trip. I don't want you to be worrying about things. I don't want your kids to be worrying about things. I want you to spend an enjoyable time with your kids. And burned into my mind is this scruffy, 6'3", 6'4", 240-pound man who, if you saw in a dark alley, would be concerned for your life, break down, and sob like a child. He then gave me the biggest hug anyone's ever given me and pulled back and looked me in the eyes and said, Matthew, no one has ever cared about me like you have just shown. He went on to have a wonderful trip with his kids. A year or so later, he left my employment. And then a year or so after that, he was back in prison. I haven't talked to James in a few years, but I would dare say that that's a memory for him and his family. There's more. There's more to life. There's more to business than just money. Certainly success is wonderful. Being able to buy what you want, go where you want, do what you want. I've been there. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty great to be able to fly in those Delta One seats to Europe. Don't start. If you've ever done it, don't. It's bad. You'll always want to do that. Oh, wow, we got like tissues? This is embarrassing now. Thanks, Ryan. But if you take away anything from today at all, this is what I want you to take away. Show kindness. Give, and then give some more. You should never regret a kindness offered. With success, you can change the very trajectory of people's lives. So, when you fail, and you will, especially when you fail big, hold on to those feelings that you have. Remember how you feel deep down. Remember those who show you kindness during those moments. Because guess what? It will be okay. Failure isn't the end, it's a chapter. Whether it's permanent, at least in that one thing, or temporary, catastrophic or recoverable, you will be okay if you keep moving forward. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's the road to it. I know Elon Musk is a little out of favor with some people right now, but I love this quote. Optimism, pessimism, screw that. We're going to make it happen. So as you go forward in business, as you go forward as entrepreneurs and seeking and pursuing the things that excite you, as you strive to create, strive to achieve, remember these things. And remember that failure is not the opposite of success. Thank you all for coming. And any questions?